Hi, everyone. It's Dr. Lynn Vance here. I'm a doctor of acupuncture and Chinese medicine. In addition to having a Bachelor of Science in Holistic Nursing, I have a practice over at Healthcare Harmonics, and I created this video just to answer the common question that I get, which is, how does acupuncture work? I, with after 20 something years in practice, I think what people actually mean to ask is, how can acupuncture help me? Like, I don't understand enough about it to decide if I need to see an acupuncturist or not. And some people do freak out about, oh, how is it? What are you actually going to be doing to me? My typical answer has something to do with, most people don't know how their medication works. They just know that if their doctor gives them a medication for a specific condition, they're more concerned with how do I take it than how is it working? Because most people don't know. You don't know the cells that the medication is targeting. You don't know how it's metabolized through your system or any of that. You just take it, right? So this video is meant to address some aspect of integrative care that can explain maybe in an integrative context what are the best use practices for each medical system. So it's my personal belief that health exists on a continuum, somewhere between optimal vitality and death, right? So if I look at this continuum, symptom presentation shows up about a third of the way across, right? And this will vary depending on what age you are, right? So optimal vitality at 20 versus 40 versus 70 looks very different. So that symptom presentation line is going to be shifted farther to the right. You're gonna have a lot more resilience in your system as you're younger. As you get older, that symptom presentation line creeps a little bit closer to optimal vitality because there's less of a range that you have, right? You have less resilience as you get older. But the next step tends to be lab detection. So, what does this mean for you? So, before the symptom presentation line, what we're looking at is a vague, um, maybe emotional sense that something is off, but there's no physical symptoms yet. It's chronic stress or some mild anxiety or you're not handling stress very well. Um, but you don't have any physical symptoms yet. It's a lot of people in this situation. But between symptom presentation and lab detection, that is where okay, I've got some physical symptoms. There are some things going on, some headaches, some digestive complaints, some just symptoms that you're starting to be concerned about. So you go to the doctor, you do your annual checkup, they do your labs and your vital signs, and they can't find anything. So a good doctor will say something to you on the lines of, I'm not seeing anything. We'll keep an eye on it. If something gets worse, make another appointment, come back. I can't find anything right now. Um, in my opinion, it's an irresponsible doctor would say, there's nothing wrong with you because I can't find anything, right? It doesn't mean there's nothing wrong. It means that you're not sick enough for anything to show up on a lab test. But um, the next step after that is you're going to end up with a diagnosis, right? So what this looks like is people who have metabolic syndrome. So there's enough going on that we can tell that they're off. That's the lab detection step. And then it used to be thought to be inevitable that people who have metabolic syndrome will end up with type 2 diabetes in a certain time period. We know now that that's not true. You can do a lot to turn that back around toward optimal vitality. Um, and then once you have a diagnosis, that range between diagnosis and hospitalization obviously depends upon the circumstance, the diagnosis, whether we're talking about an injury or a cancer or something that you can live a long time with, right? But in the sense of the range between diagnosis and hospitalization is a lot shorter than the distance between optimal vitality and diagnosis in the sense of along this continuum. And then once you're hospitalized with something, death comes very quickly, relatively speaking, right? Now, of course, there are things like I get into a car accident and have a concussion and multiple fractures, and I'm in the hospital. That can happen very quickly. That's not what we're talking about. Just talking about generally healthy, walking around, but you're out of balance, either physically, emotionally, spiritually, something's off along this continuum. What I'm saying is acupuncture practice thrives in the space between optimal vitality and lab detection. By definition, what we do is gather, we're going to ask you a lot of questions. We're going to come up with a we have a specific series of questions that we ask, and we're going to gather all the symptoms depending on what's going on with you and create what we call a pattern of imbalance. These are diagnoses under the scope of an acupuncturist, and there are many that don't necessarily will not correlate to anything showing up on a lab test because our medicine was created before there were lab tests and is largely preventive. So, very small symptoms can um, end up creating this pattern of imbalance, and that's what we're actually treating, right? Now, Western medicine is the best system in the world between this lab detection and death. Best system in the world for pulling you back from the brink of death. So physicians have a heavy load here, and I think that they're very good at what they do in that range. Now, we're talking about best practices and where each system thrives. And in my opinion, this is it. But also, public health does most of this. If we're looking back towards optimal vitality from the Western side, we're talking about clean, safe drinking water. We're talking about food, nutrition, um, you know, uh, clean food supply, vaccination, all of these things that are not necessarily, we don't really consider that healthcare, um, but does most of that pre lab detection work. And then on the acupuncture side, um, we very much use acupuncture in a complementary fashion. A lot of, at this point, I feel like acupuncture is becoming standard practice for cancer treatment, for example. There's a lot of integrative practices for things like fertility enhancement, people getting IUI, IVF with acupuncture. I personally know several acupuncturists who got into acupuncture because they had a broken limb and they needed to heal really fast. And somebody told them to go see an acupuncturist, and it worked for them, where the expected healing time was 8 weeks and they may be healed in 5. So, both of these systems work across the entire continuum. But what I'm talking about today is maybe what's a best practice. Where can you seek an acupuncturist? What makes the most sense? And when you should definitely see a doctor. Once something shows up on a lab, and you have a diagnosis, you should definitely be treated with that Western system. You should just check in minimally. Once you have good information, um, you can take it from there. If you have a really good healthcare team of open minded and responsible providers, you can use both of these systems across the entire spectrum. But um, I hope this information sheds a little bit of light on why you would seek care from an acupuncturist. Take care. I'll be back next time.